Hello. It's, I don't know what day it is. It'll have to be Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday, week 5. Wednesday, week 5. And we're continuing along the road of the syllabus here. It's here. No, it's not here. Anyway, this will be the end of this section. Dealing with legal elements. We just did political, economic, and technological. This is also, I think, in 16, the end of chapter 16, on page number, oh no, that's not, 16 is economy, and it would be legal factors, page 118. 118 is in chapter 18. If you look at our syllabus, it focuses on product liability and IT. But of course, there's a lot of things other than that. Not IT, IP. But of course, there's a lot of other things involved when you start up or you move or expand to another country. So you can really look at the whole process, and there's legal elements all the way across. You know, from the time that you need to set up a business license, about the kinds of partnerships that are available in that country, what are the legal rights of a foreign owner of a business in that country. So you have a lot of different things, even when you just get started. And so when you go from there, you will find that, then you're setting up the business and you need a logo, so you need a trademark. And then you have to look at the export-import law to be able to get your product into that country. You have to hire people. So there's going to be all kinds of laws there. You might have a minimum wage, you might have labor standards, issues. There's a lot of things there. Then you get to the selling, then you have advertising law, you have, which probably is not too strict unless you're selling alcohol or tobacco, or sugar cereal in some places. So then you get the, so you have some promotional laws, distribution laws. How are you, you might have other laws about selling. Certain products can be sold at certain times. And, there might be laws regulating the labeling of things. So you have to then go to that level in your sales. Even for it to be legally for sale, it has to have instructions if it needs it, and ingredients, and might have to be in the language. Everybody has to, you see in the markets here, when they import products, they let them put like a paper label with a translation of what they need to have in Vietnamese on the label. I don't know if that's still going on. That might be over now. You have other laws that regulate e-commerce. You have liability, product liability laws. You have the, so that's where it goes, right? So they focus here in our syllabus. It basically just gives us 2 examples of product liability. There's famous product liability suits about coffee. Actually, McDonald's had one where it was $1 million lawsuit because someone got burnt. A lady spilled the coffee and it was too hot the way they produced it. I don't know why they did that. There was a reason why they kept it so hot, but it was, in the end, I had that coffee before. You would buy it wait 40 minutes before you could drink it. It was so hot. I never saw anything so hot in my life. Oh, then you have packaging. So packaging, you know, might come down to no plastic bags or no straws. Now you have all those things going on. So there's a lot of different laws and legal factors that you have to consider. So as you go and you imagine your process of setting up the business and running the business and the operations and the marketing, there's a lot of stuff to think about. Now, the ones that they actually give us as that we, in the syllabus, I think are fairly straightforward. I would say most countries are probably pretty strong on trademark. Most countries are probably pretty weak on patent. So when it comes to like being able to protect your in a foreign court, being able to protect your innovations, that might be a problem. Usually the names that companies have are reasonably protected by most governments. So let's listen to a general overview from this guy first, and then we'll go to the book.
So what are the legal risks or the legal considerations that a party needs to consider when carrying on business in a foreign country? When we talk about the different methods of entering a foreign market, in international business, carrying on business internationally is unique by its very nature. All of the things that you have to do strategically, marketing, etc., are a bit different in the international context. It expands the scope of what you have to do to identify your target market, how to reach them. Understanding different operational aspects, management techniques, etc. But legal consideration.
I just want to say that, in order for me to get my working papers here, I have to take all the basic things that are unaccepted documents in my country, like my diploma, which is fairly straightforward. And I have to go and translate all of those things into Vietnamese. So pretty much every document that you have in your whatever language would have to be translated into probably the language of the country in which you're going to operate.
Or the hurdles that you'll run into, the legal risks, are an important part of those strategic and operational considerations. So to start with, what are the governing laws when you're carrying on the international business? Because generally we've talked about the application of contract laws and international agreements in the sale and trade of goods. Well, normally in a foreign country you're going to have different laws governing the sale of goods, the provision of services pursuant to contracts, and these different contract laws are going to apply at different points, whether it's the point at which the contract originates in the international environment, and then the point at which the goods or services are provided in the host country. So again, contractual rights are going to be different. Your labor laws will oftentimes be different. Your business entity and regulatory reporting requirements may be different in the foreign country. Intellectual property recognition rights, any of these things, all of the traditional forms of law that exists in any domestic environment. You can think within the United States, anything from commercial law, tort law, intellectual property law, laws of contracts with sale of goods, things like that are going to be different in the foreign environment. So you have to be able to navigate those efficiently. And the second, how are you going to enforce your rights? So we've talked about in the international context before the goods or services are actually provided in.
That was good to slow that guy down a little bit. Here, let's look at the list here because I like it for its notes. It's the questions that we're going to ask. So it's contracts. Contracts. So what are you going to do with contract? How good is it? I think I mentioned once before that when you're renting in Vietnam, it's a mess, right? So if you're going to a foreign country, how strong are the rental agreements? That's an operational consideration. I think that's very important. I think you should look it up. I think if I was the CEO of the company and I was going to ask and say, hey, what is it we have to, what should we have to worry about in terms of how we rent? You know, can we secure the locations that are good? Because even if we find locations that are good and if we can't keep them, then we're going to have to change our locations all the time, which is going to be a huge drag. And we're going to lose customers and we're not going to be able to, it'll mess up the whole operation. You have to reinvest into the construction of the new place. It's really, really bad if you have to keep doing that. So that's one example of contract. We have labor contracts, we have contracts with suppliers and other things like that. What's the strength of the laws? Does the foreign country recognize and protect your IP? I think I just mentioned that it's fair in Europe, it's very strict. So you should be okay in Europe, but in Asia it might be different. And usually trademarks are the most protected form of intellectual property. Copyrights, you don't really have too much of those. And patents, on anything that you would want to patent, those can be difficult to protect because the transparency is not good. The transparency of the process. You have to understand the process. That means you have to hire lawyers from the other country. Maybe you have to have an understanding, even with, you know, you hire a lawyer and then you have to believe everything they say because you can't even know if it's a good or bad lawyer. So you don't know if they're right or wrong. Better call Saul. I don't know. How do you know if this lawyer is a good one? So you have to really look for a recommendation from somebody else who's had international, so much probably relies on recommendation. Legal hurdles in the importation process. What does that mean? That means that, you know, customs, all that stuff that you have to do. Now, free trade agreements can make that easy. But if there's not a strong free trade agreement, or maybe coffee is not covered in that free trade agreement, then you would have to think about that. And that includes bribes. And that includes corruption. Just because countries in the WTO doesn't mean there's still not bribes. Try to find out what's real about that country. Not just, oh, they signed a treaty that said no corruption. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Legal hurdles. And coffee, I guess, if you package it right, is okay. But you imagine if you were sending something like meat, cheese, something that didn't have fruit, things that didn't last a long time. Imagine how stressful it would be if you had them delivered to customs and you couldn't get them out and to send them to the stores. That'd be a massive problem to deal with. Again, tariffs, duties, customs, that's all related to the importation process. Labor laws for operations. Labor laws.
Or environment, so you have to be able to navigate those efficiently. And the second, how are you going to enforce your rights? So we've talked about in the international context before the goods or services are actually provided in the country of destination. You have international agreements, and then you
So you talk about property rights, you talk about rental agreements. In some cases, if you have an import problem, you might need some international courts. Legal system may be difficult to navigate or unavailable to foreigners. Does that mean you should have an international partner? Or a partner of the host country? Maybe. Think about it.
enter into agreements as to how any disputes over the agreement can be enforced or resolved. But when you do business directly in a foreign country, how do you enforce your rights there? Do you have equal access to the court system? How do you navigate that? Is the court system open for foreign individuals? Are you going to receive the same level of protection? That is, how strong is the rule of law system and the equal application of law to all individuals there? And then how strong is the political environment? That is the country politically stable? That is there going to be any government takeover of entities? Is there going to be any increased regulatory provisions for international businesses? Are there going to be any tariffs or duties placed on importation of goods from foreign countries? Any of these things can apply. So whether it's from, again, the country nationalizing certain areas or sectors or industry, or simply reaching out and taking your business to charging higher levels of taxes, all of these things arise and create a level of uncertainty or legal risk for carrying on business in the foreign nation. So while these are early stage, part of the legal considerations, they also go into the operational planning as to how you're going to overcome these barriers, or at least navigate them efficiently.
Notice he said planning. So that was kind of what we're talking about there, planning. And that's why you're making this research, is to get ahead of these problems. All right, I'll go to the book just for the fun of the book, and to say that we covered the book. Legal factors on page 118. Let me see if there's anything that's not mentioned. There can be major differences between the laws in different countries. Management of a business must understand what the differences are and how they will affect the export and sale of products and services. Number one, difference between legal systems. The difference between, if you're in Saudi Arabia, then you got to deal with Islamic law. That's a whole other game. So in some cases, you might have to go beyond what we consider the standards of what justice is or what legal things should be. There can be a lot of laws in Middle Eastern countries that may, imagine you have to open a cafe in Saudi Arabia and there's a section for women and a section for men. So you have to build a cafe where only women can serve women and only men can serve men, and the bathrooms and the thing, and how the staff room and all this stuff. Because men and women are not allowed to be in the same room. So that would be crazy, right? And that's the law. That's the difference, and the legal system protects that. So you have to be ready for that. And you can do research on it, though. You can do research, and that's how that works. Differences in contract law, again, the most common are labor contracts and rental agreements, and suppliers. Probably those are the three main things. X group. Patent registration and other intellectual property, discussed it. Product liability. Product liability is on, actually we should just do that now. Product liability starts on page 119 on the bottom. Globalization offers opportunities for Australian businesses to expand into new markets, find new business partners, and also suppliers. It also creates significant operational and regulatory challenges around product liability. operating in different countries with different laws and different regulations makes managing product liability risk complex. America is the product liability capital of the universe, so if you don't have insurance, you might as well go bankrupt today. Or if you don't have 1,000 lawyers, so it's like, you have to be really, really, there's a lot of people who are looking for lawsuits. It's a very lawfare, as some people call it, lawfare oriented culture. And it's important that you have product liability insurance. That's usually the way you handle that. Now, I don't know if there's a lot of product liability issues with coffee, but with a lot of products, if you do something wrong with the instructions, or you don't notice that the power is different in that country, or you cause any injury or harm, it's going to be not only a loss of money, but the PR is going to be horrible. We can all remember Formosa Company, right? And how we all hate Taiwan now because of the company Formosa. Page 120 in the book. Laws of countries hold the business responsible for any loss, damage, or injury caused by any product. Legal liability travels with every product that is exported and sold overseas. Global consumers are aware of their rights and will exercise those rights by filing product liability suits against exporters, manufacturers, maybe even suppliers. And when managing product liability, the different policies and regulations in countries are different. We can keep in mind, though, that this kind of lawsuit can also happen for other reasons, such as privacy invasion, credit card fraud. There's all kinds of things that could happen where you would get sued by a customer. In Australia, they give some examples. Of course, product liability starts with fines for not following the law. Second, you can have damages that you have to pay to the victims. Third, horrible PR, which could lead to product boycotts, which is what I think happened to Formosa. Nobody wants to buy their products anymore. A lot of money spent on legal fees. Sometimes you'll have to call the product in and get all the stores to send the product back to your warehouse or factory. Yikes. Of course, that leads to loss of sales, of course, too. Just one liability claim can put a severe financial strain on a business. Even a business defending itself against a claim and winning can still cost millions of dollars in legal costs and bad PR. For example, if a sharp edge or a small removable part is left on a product and a child gets hurt using it, the business will be liable for the legal action and civil damages. A business can be held liable for any faulty or dangerous product in 3 ways. One can be negligence, means you didn't really pay attention and give reasonable care to the product and the warnings and the instructions. That's called negligence. Strict liability is just your product harmed somebody, and that's it. It was a reasonable expectation. The person used it in a way that was fairly reasonable, so they got hurt in a way that the court will understand is your fault. The other kind of product liability case, which I don't think is super popular in this country, for example, is not following the warranties that are legally binding in that country. So In Australia, of course, the warranties are very strict. So if there is some kind of issue with a product that breaks, it's very clear what the retailer has to do. It's all there. If it's less than 3 years, you have to replace it for a refrigerator. You know, these things are all set up. So in most countries, though, it's kind of, you know, hard to say what you would, you know, everything's going to be different about how much warranty time and who do you complain to? You know, so it's like the customer actually has trouble too to hire a lawyer. And if a customer is going to hire a lawyer, then you can expect that it's going to be not the only customer, and they're going to join together with other customers who have the same problem. So insurance is probably the strongest solution. Product liability insurance protects your company in case of, there's a harm caused by it. Insurance is recommended for every business that manufactures a product. This is not a manufacturing business here, but you need to know it for the test. So, the level of insurance is required is dependent upon how likely and how much harm can the product actually cause. You know, those are the two things. So, if it's a Nerf football, they can try to eat it, but other than that, it's pretty soft. There's probably very few injuries from a Nerf football. If it's an electronic device, it's probably more complicated. If the product has a high risk of injury, insurance cover must be higher. Liability in products can include design defects and manufacturing defects. Harms or injury may also be caused by inadequate labeling, the wrong or poor instructions that people cannot understand, or a lack of warnings about how to store the product or use it. So the insurance is just there, and you know the insurance company is going to go and evaluate, of course, what it is that you are selling and how much risk is going to go along with that. So they'll team up with you to make some price for that insurance that hopefully is not going to bankrupt your company. So then we have the IP. Let me start here. Kind of like this. I put this in the chat, in the classroom for you, because I kind of like it. Legal issues to be aware of when running an international business. They have a few topics here that were kind of good. So, let's see. A successful economic development strategy must focus. Oh, I don't care about that person. Company laws. This is the first thing that I was saying before, is that ideas of what kind of partnerships you need to have. Can you own outright? Are you allowed to own the whole business without anybody else as a partner? Do partners have rights that, like voting rights over you? Are you allowed to have a majority of shares even if you have a partner? What happens when there's a dispute between the partner and you? So what kind of things in the partnership agreement can be taken to court? Is that legal, and is that legal system there gonna support you as much as they support both parties? Will be fair. It's hard to read. It's hard to read. I don't know how to make it darker. Bigger. Anyway, I put it in the classroom for you, so everybody has it. You can read these things. Company laws. Oops, you blew up the internet. This page is no longer here. So what can happen? Can you use your own company from overseas still? Do you have to start a new company? Or what's gonna happen? Consider the relevant company laws. Not all countries have a business-friendly legal climate. Request the advice of local consultants to get adequate knowledge. Use your embassy, use your chamber of commerce. Employment laws. Running a global business means that you're going to employ staff in different locations, and these laws may be different. So there's wage laws, health and safety, which we did, and other legal requirements to concern yourself with. Dismissal maybe, but that shouldn't be the first thing. First thing might be discrimination laws. Is this one gonna work? And that doesn't. 1, 2, 3. No. Oops. Oh, so yeah, no. Taxes. Don't forget taxes for the employees. Sometimes there's a lot of taxes, and when the taxes are high, then hiring new staff is more expensive, and the business has to be very careful to, how much it's actually going to cost. So you could say that an employee in Australia gets a salary of some amount, but then their taxes are very high, and we also have superannuation, which the employer is responsible for. So some of those laws make hiring extra employees very expensive. Corruption, again, so much corruption. I like this one. Corruption is a major issue in most countries of the world. Here's another one too. They say, no, this other one, it said every country has its own form of corruption. I think that's true, Americans, there's like a bureaucratic corruption. It's like oh yeah, you didn't do this, so now you have to pay a fine, and now you didn't do this, you were supposed to do this, and now you have to pay a little bit more here. They get you with a lot of red tape. So, have to understand what kind of tea money, or as we saw, it was called lubrication, little tea money, to get through certain elements of a process. And I would tell the CEO that. I would say, look, if you really want to get your documents from point A to point B, you have to pay an extra fee to get there. There are investment treaties like ISDS that allow companies to invest in other stock markets, for example. But we're not really concerned with that. And that's what ISDS originally was supposed to try to do, was to say, okay, well, if you invest in this country, then you shouldn't lose your investment. You won't invest unless you feel your investment is secure. So we have this law that allows you to sue us if you think that our law changes are going to affect your profits. But, to me, business is risk. It should be risky. I mean, of course, business is going to try to avoid, eliminate all risk. So ISDS, but as a country who has its own laws, there's no reason why you shouldn't. You can't minimize completely the risk. What if the business just sucks and they don't have good marketing strategy? Investment treaties, but those treaties are to promote foreign investment, not so much what we're doing. Legal systems, civil and common law. That's a lot of work to understand those two. Taxes, IP, that's what we want. Intellectual property rights usually are assigned in each country you have applied, which means that if you have your company name trademark in one state, protection will be given in another state. So countries, they're usually national policies. In practice, the consequences of this regime are that in order to have your IP rights protected, you have to apply in the country you're seeking it, which costs money. If your business is operating in multiple countries, you may get an overall European Union patent, for example. But otherwise, you really have to consider each of the states where you're going to. So that thing is called, there's International Trade Organization and World Intellectual Property Organization. Wipeouts! You know wipeout. That's what I think about when I think about this. Latest from the World Intellectual Property Organization.
Innovation, the uniquely human force that drives mankind's progress. Without innovation, your phone wouldn't be smart, there'd be no GPS, no music on the go, and no HD video, stories without special effects, no colour, no sound. And unable to look inside the human body, doctors would be in the dark. The intellectual property system exists to encourage the innovators and creators who make the world a better place. The World Intellectual Property Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations, helps them do this every day across the globe. WIPO provides a forum where governments debate and shape intellectual property laws, such as copyright laws, to adapt them to the changing needs of our global digital society. WIPO's goal is to make intellectual property work for everyone. WIPO operates international filing systems that make it easier to protect and promote inventions, brands, and designs across borders. Everyone, from individual inventors and small businesses to the world's biggest companies, can file a single application through WIPO's PCT, Madrid, and Hague systems to apply for protection in countries across the world. This saves them time and money. In the last 50 years, WIPO has processed over 4.5 million international patent, trademark, and design applications for everything, from machine tools to medicines to solar panels. And when disagreements arise over IP, WIPO provides arbitration and mediation as an alternative to costly court proceedings. WIPO gives people the tools to use IP effectively, helping people in developing countries to make a living from their ingenuity and creativity. That means more opportunity and more jobs. Innovation requires information. WIPO provides free access to IP information, including more than 55 million patent documents and more than 25 million records of trademarks and designs. And WIPO trains tens of thousands of people every year how to access, learn from, and use all of this priceless information. Since its inception over 100 years ago, the global IP system overseen by WIPO has helped create an environment where innovation and creativity can flourish. That means more minds creating new technologies to conquer the world's problems, more music and more ways to listen to it, more art and culture, and more knowledge reaching us in ever-increasing ways. Every day, creative people all over the world are finding new ways to improve our future. WIPO and the intellectual property system help make that happen.
Thanks, WIPO. Wipeout. Gotta love that show. Wipeout. Easy to remember. Wipeout. World Intellectual Property Organization. I saw that on a test before, so I would be a little bit, careful to understand at least the names of these World Intellectual Property Organization. And also the Madrid Protocol. Madrid. So there's a globe. So Wipeout is the top level, and then the second level is there's the Madrid Protocol is for patents and trademarks. So let me just make a few notes. Page 118. As we know, intellectual property is important. Remember why? Why is it important? Intellectual property. Because it is your competitive advantage. Right? You've got to sustain that competitive advantage. You got to make it work for you. That's why it's there. You got it. You work for it. You don't want to lose it. So your intellectual property is what is your competitive advantage. That's why we care about it. Whether it's the name of your company or whatever. So these intellectual property, they're legally binding, enforceable, and give the owner exclusive rights to manufacture, sell, promote any substance, device, or method of process. We learned this last year. The IP globally, there are two options. You can apply every country individually, or you can try the PCT, which is the Patent Cooperation Treaty. PCT is administered by the Wipeouts. And so the PCT means that Starbucks can just apply to one, usually for bigger companies, they can just apply to one place to get their intellectual property protected. And sometimes there's a yearly fee for that. So that means that the PCT and the Wipeout, they get their money every year from you. Trademarks, and so that's patents. Sorry, patents are PCT, and then trademarks are the Madrid Protocol. So actually, Starbucks would probably use the Madrid Protocol on page 119. If a trademark is registered in Australia, it is not protected overseas. Protecting trademarks globally can be done in two ways. Register in countries individually, or this time call for the Madrid Protocol. It's a treaty that countries enter into, like the World Trade Organization. So it's respected because of that. If a country that you have is not in this Madrid Protocol, then companies cannot be protected. There's a lot of trademark violations for some companies, like I don't know which keyword to use. I just know that Bing won't work. Oh my God! I'm so mad at this thing. Why does it say? Oh. Please work. Lots of trademarks, images. So there's a lot of people are like, is that too similar? Win or lose? This one they lost. Starbucks lost to Star Preya coffee. Star Preya with the head and the head and and a thing and a green and 2 stars and green and white. Lost to this terrible, and that might not be because they should lose. That could be because South Korea doesn't want to support or they don't want to defend copyright from international companies. But this is my favorite. This has always been my favorite. I love this one. Starbucks tries to defend its logo. Their first logo, 1971, update. 2003, they said that Star Prea's logo was too similar, but they didn't care. They lost. The second case against a Japanese dairy company. Starbucks claimed that it's too similar. Did they win? It's a mountain, blah, 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 it's not the same. But this one is the best one. So here, I guess, they changed their name because Starbucks pushed them to change the name, but when you look at it, it's pretty funny. It's Starbucks. It's Starbucks. No, it's Starbucks. Coffee and Company. I mean, yeah, they got the wavy lines there. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's kind of goofy. Can you get me a Starbucks coffee on your way here? You mean Starbucks? Yeah, no, Starbucks. It's pretty bad, pretty silly. So there's been a lot of cases that they have to keep fighting over and over again. And that can be protected by the Madrid Protocol. Madrid Protocol is there to help settle disputes and arguments between companies. I won't go any farther. One more section I can cover here today. See if there's anything we missed. Lawsuits and contracts. I put this one into the chat too. I know it gets cut off, but it's pretty good review. Theocratic law, that means law of religion. So this is the kind of thing that would happen in Saudi Arabia, right? So that's what I was talking about before. How law is applied and product safety, yeah. So that one, well, that doesn't help us very much. But there was one other one that I found that could help. Retailing, how regional political politics influence international retailing. In China, I think this is the kind of the point. You know, China. I mean, it doesn't just depend on the country. It depends on the relationship between the countries. The U.S. and China have a terrible relationship at the moment. So as far as that goes, it's like, one moment the Chinese might, retaliate against companies in your country, in their, your country's companies. They might just say, okay, well, you guys are going against us, so we're just going to go against you. That's it. It's easy. We're just going to fight you. That's it. You penalize our country, and our company will penalize you. But actually, the one that I think of the most is, and that has to do with legal changes. Can happen, especially when countries disagree. And that also, so that leads to an inconsistent legal environment where sometimes the law is doing one thing and then the next thing is going to change. Now, back to technology is that the laws about privacy and online commerce, those things are going to change sometimes too. So if you're collecting data on your customers, some countries like European countries are very strict about privacy and not letting companies just take whatever information they want. And there could be censorship, there could be things that countries don't want you to say, and so you might have to, if you have some kind of platform where customers are making comments, then you might limit, or you might have to limit some of the, you might have to be aware of what's allowed and what rules there are, and warn people and put specific warnings about these things so they don't step over the line. So e-commerce, I think that's one other thing where you have to worry about legal factors, especially if you're in China. And I think that's it. I think that's all I want to do today on politics. I put these lessons in these articles into the classroom for everyone. So you'll be able to use them. I can even show you here. I'll put this one in too. Except that one, it doesn't copy the URL, it just copies the name. It's so stupid. Why is that? What is happening to the internet? They're changing it. This is a URL, it's not a title. I'm copying the title, I'm not a URL. I'm not copying the name of the article. This is the link. But it doesn't link, right? If I save it, it doesn't link. Yeah, it doesn't. It puts a black thing that you can't even press on. And it's ridiculous. I'm saving the URL, I'm copying it. Oh my God. What have they done? They made it impossible to copy and paste URLs. I swear to God, I'm so tired of this nonsense. Just let people do what they want to do. Anyway, this links off of the article. Okay, so I'll put this one. So here, you just get to see how this stuff works these days. This is too incredible. Cut. And then, what did I do? I had to copy from another, So this is links to the next topic, but it's unreal. Just unbelievable. So that's it for today and this week, or at least Wednesday. Have a great day.